Welcome to the What's New Symantec Endpoint Protection 14.1 presentation. In this module, we will review new product features, architecture, installation, policy use cases, and related product functionality. This presentation includes updates to 14.1 based upon the final release product version. In this module overview, we'll be discussing the following topics: product introduction, requirements, and architecture, security cloud, the Security Cloud console. We'll take a brief look at a product demonstration. We'll be discussing the memory exploit mitigation policy and a certificate exception. We'll also discuss endpoint detection and response, application hardening, and end with a look at REST API updates. Any information regarding pre-release Symantec offerings, future updates, or other planned modifications is subject to ongoing evaluation by Symantec and therefore subject to change. This information is provided without warranty of any kind, express or implied. Customers who purchase Symantec offerings should make their purchase decisions based upon features that are currently available. This is the Introduction, Requirements, and Architecture SEP 14.1 topic. Before we discuss the new features introduced in Symantec Endpoint Protection 14.1, it might be helpful to understand where the product fits into the expanding endpoint protection family of products. At a high level, we have two management options: on-premise and cloud managed. Symantec Endpoint Protection 14 and Endpoint Protection Small Business Edition are managed on-premise, though there is also a cloud option for Small Business Edition. However, Small Business Edition's features have largely been migrated to the fully cloud-managed product, SEP Cloud. Endpoint Protection 14.1 is a cloud-managed solution connected and dependent upon the on-premise version of SEP 14. As the product has been in development, it has also been referred to by various other names, including SEP-C, SEP Advanced, and SAEP. SEP Hardening, when available, will be a separately licensed addition to SEP 14.1, and we will introduce it in a bit more detail later in the presentation. It is difficult to introduce the SEP 14.1 product without discussing changes included in the Symantec Endpoint Protection 14 RU1 release update. This is due to the fact that release RU1 largely focuses on preparing the endpoint protection platform for future product offerings and enhancements, and introduces a new hybrid computing platform for Symantec Endpoint Protection called Security Cloud. The combination of SEP RU1 and Security Cloud is the product release called Symantec Endpoint Protection 14.1. Release RU1 provides the framework for not only this release, but future integrations with SEP Hardening, as well as Symantec Advanced Threat Protection, or ATP, and is a required component of SEP 14.1. Where additional features included in SEP 14 RU1 are relevant to the on-premise installation only will be noted in this presentation. SEP 14.1 is the first product release building upon the core strength of the SEP 14 client, with expanding threat protection technologies that allow customers to stay ahead of emerging threats. SEP 14.1 provides new sets of controls to help discover suspicious files, aggressively block attacks using advanced machine learning and behavior analysis, and protects against fileless malware. SEP Hardening, when available, will protect against both file-based and fileless malware being introduced by Microsoft Office macros, browsers, and other applications, and is the next line of defense that builds upon this new platform. SEP 14.1 helps customers stay ahead of emerging threats with new cloud-based policy configurations to discover and block suspicious detection using aggressive mode, aggressive prevention policies that are tunable by each enterprise, providing end-to-end visibility of suspicious activity, with better support for low bandwidth environments, with infrequent, in this case weekly, client updates. Integrated false management, to manage false positives, false negatives easily, manage blacklists and whitelists locally, both individually and in bulk, and cloud-based management. Security posture and risk rating for all assets, automatic recommendations and one-click mitigation response. Seamless integration with on-premise SEPM through the Security Cloud bridge. Because SEP 14.1 introduces a new cloud management connection, an additional cloud account is required. This account is called the Symantec Security Cloud account and can be used across multiple Symantec cloud-enabled products such as SEP Cloud and Cloud Workload Protection. SEP 14.1 connects Endpoint Protection 14 RU1 based SEPM and clients to the Security Cloud environment via the Symantec Cloud Bridge connector. All other system requirements will follow published SEP 14.x guidelines. For further system requirement details, see the KB article shown. The Cloud Bridge connector allows a SEP administrator to synchronize communications between an on-premise SEPM and the Security Cloud data center. Once enrolled, advanced policies can be assigned via the Security Cloud console. Use of these policies requires the enterprise to upgrade SEPM and clients to SEP 14 RU1. You can enroll a domain that includes earlier Symantec Endpoint Protection clients, but these earlier clients cannot take advantage of Symantec Endpoint Protection 14.1 features. SEP clients do not currently connect directly to the cloud server, but instead receive all communication and updates through the SEPM. This is the Security Cloud Symantec 14.1 topic. One of the first changes you may notice when launching the updated Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager console is a new icon called Security Cloud. Security Cloud is a cloud-based management service that services an expanding list of Symantec security products. Opening the Security Cloud page accesses the enrollment mechanism used to connect the SEPM to the Symantec Security Cloud infrastructure. Enrollment of the SEPM establishes a connection, or bridge, to the cloud service, providing dashboard views and policy management for Symantec Endpoint Protection. Enrollment in Security Cloud is free for existing SEP 14 customers. Enrollment is optional, but is required to use the advanced features of SEP 14.1, which are only available via the Cloud console. Access to Security Cloud features begins with the creation of a specific account, sometimes referred to as a Symantec account. This account allows access to the SEP 14.1 cloud environment for SEPM enrollment, but can also be used to access other Symantec Security Cloud-based products such as Endpoint Protection Cloud and Cloud Workload Protection. The first account created will be granted all administrative privileges to the Security Cloud environment. Once enrolled, the connection status can be monitored from the SEPM Cloud page using the troubleshooting link. SEP 14.1 will refer to the enrolled SEPM environment as a domain. When the domain is enrolled, events, policies, clients, and client groups are synchronized. Cloud policy settings will take precedence. Cloud-supported policy features are only available in the cloud. They are not supported for configuration in Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. Enrollment in Security Cloud will install two new additional services on the SEPM server. Symantec Endpoint Protection Bridge Service collects assets and events. Assets include the protection clients, servers, their logical group, and policy structure. Events are log data from the clients. In Symantec Endpoint Protection Bridge Uploader Service, it communicates with and uploads data to the Security Cloud service. It's responsible for compressing asset and event data. This is the Security Cloud Console SEP 14.1 topic. This screen shows the main page of the Symantec Security Cloud console after logging in. A collapsible navigation pane opens on the left side to allow ease of access to console pages, including Home, Dashboard, Devices, Discovered Items, Policies, Alerts and Events, Integration APIs, and Settings. Let's take a closer look at each of these areas. The Home page provides administrative users with quick links to recent console activity, useful product how-to articles, and Symantec Help Center video content and information. It also includes a product guided tour to quickly familiarize yourself with console functionality, as well as an easy way to submit feedback and questions through registration with the Symantec Connect forum. The Dashboard page provides system administrators with a snapshot view of suspicious detections by intensity level, risk categories, and prevalence, as well as a client version distribution and cumulative actions taken and unresolved within their environment. Graph data is actionable from the Dashboard page. Simply select an area of concern to view further details or to initiate remediation actions. You can use the dashboard to check the results of policy log settings and tune the policy settings if necessary. The Devices page shows devices and device groups. that are imported from Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. When the Device Master option is enabled, the group structure is then managed in the cloud. You can no longer create a group in Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. Both the Device Group and Devices page contain filters that can be used to sort listed devices. Use menu controls to customize columns and show additional options which can be selected to create groups, add devices, and apply policy. From the Device page, you can select individual entries to see further specific details about a device. The Device Details page provides an in-depth information about a device's security status, device settings, policies applied, files found, and event and alerts received. Security status icons provide visual cues about a device's current status. Drill down into specific alert logs to gather more information about threats in the environment. The Discovered Items page provides a listing of all binary files from all devices that generate intensive level protection events. Like most other pages in Security Cloud, multiple filter settings can be selected and combined with sorting options to quickly narrow down and reveal the most relevant data in an environment. The Policies page is the location to create and configure the primary security policy configurations used in the solution. After enrollment, Symantec Endpoint Protection 14.1 becomes the Policy Master. All device groups receive policy settings only from Symantec Endpoint Protection 14.1. SEP 14.1 provides default policies out of the box. You can modify or duplicate the default policies. Use the filter and sorting options to find a specific policy in the list. Drop-down controls provide quick access for policy configuration. You can create policy groups using the Policy Group tab to assign policies to multiple device groups. We'll take a closer look at specific policy types in the next topic section. You can filter views of alerts and events. Both views provide drill downs that include enhanced details. Events are informational, notable, and critical activities that take place in your environment. All events are logged as they occur and are listed in the Events tab. Sorting controls provide flexibility for viewing. You can make a selection to help you analyze events quickly to make decisions about how to tune policies in your environment. Alerts can be triggered by a single or multiple events. A default alert rule notifies the administrator when a specific alert is triggered. Individual alert notifications can be further modified in the Alert Rules tab. Symantec Endpoint Protection 14.1 provides REST APIs that developers can use to integrate Symantec Endpoint Protection 14.1 with other security, reporting, information, and event technologies. Each API is documented, including examples of how to use it, sample responses in JSON and response codes. You can access the 14.1 REST API reference guide by clicking on the View API List button in the console. The Settings page contains system-wide options to support a variety of administrative functions. Notably, this is where administrators will find administrator and role-based configuration options, license subscription details, and Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager enrollment pages. The Cloud Portal also includes a central list of items that are whitelisted or blacklisted, so you can view all of these items in one place. This is the Intensive Protection Policy subtopic. SEP 14.1 includes a new Security Cloud Console-only policy called Intensive Protection Policy. When used, this policy provides aggressive detection technology leveraging SEP advanced machine learning techniques. Intensive Protection Policy may also be referred to as High Intensity Detection or HIDs, Aggressive Mode or Aggressive Protection, or Foresight, due to the technologies and policy group naming conventions being used in the Security Cloud Console. When using this policy, Symantec classifies files based on their reputation, behavior, and prevalence using advanced machine learning. When this detection is enabled, the following are ignored: Download Insight, Bloodhound, and some sonar settings in the Virus and Spyware Protection policy. Virus and Spyware action settings in Symantec Endpoint Protection. The default Intensive Protection blocking level is less aggressive than the most aggressive Bloodhound setting in SEPM, Virus and Spyware Protection policy. If your current policies specify Bloodhound at its highest level, you may want to increase the Intensive Protection level. The default intensive protection policy can be applied to imported SEPM groups in the Security Cloud console. Use of the monitoring and blocking level slides control the thresholds that trigger detection logging and blocking actions. General settings can be used to configure additional requirement thresholds based upon their use in the Symantec reputation community, as files used by fewer users might potentially be more harmful. Trusted Sites, on by default, allows files that users download from a trusted internet or intranet site. Set the intensity levels to quickly tune machine learning and behavior analysis. The blocking level determines the threshold for blocking detections on known and unknown file types. The monitoring level lets you control logging. Use logging to help determine what types of detections the policy makes at a certain level before you start to block at that level. The intensity level settings are the first step in an integrated workflow that allows the administrator to customize the advanced level of protection needed in their environment. Use the monitor level slide to log suspicious files. Then review the logs to make further adjustments to blocking levels in the organization. SEP 14.1 rates suspicious files on a risk level scale. The score is calculated by confidence level from machine learning, behavior analysis, and reputation data. Whitelist potential false positive files based on signer certificate authority, file hash, directory path, or URL. Risk analysis of hashes provides a summary of the file hash values found. You can use this information to determine if an increase in the blocking level threshold is required. This is the low bandwidth mode subtopic. What is low bandwidth mode? Low bandwidth mode is a Security Cloud policy setting found in the default system policy in SEP 14.1. This setting lets you enable the use of low bandwidth by SEP clients connecting to the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. Enabling this setting is useful in environments where clients require infrequent content updates or where there is low connectivity. This setting configures SEP 14 clients to receive content updates once a week. Updates can be manually initiated more frequently if required. Low bandwidth mode is off by default. Once the SEPM is enrolled with Security Cloud, you can see the low bandwidth mode client status in Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager, Clients, Group, Clients, Default View, or Protection Technology View. This is the Exceptions Policies subtopic. When a domain is enrolled, any exceptions policy items from Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager appear in an imported exceptions policy list in the Cloud portal. They will be labeled as Imported Exceptions Policy Whitelist or Blacklist. You can continue to use these imported policies, or you can add new policies that you create in the Cloud portal by modifying the default whitelist or blacklist policies. The blacklist policy is a list of binary file names and hash values. Any binary file name or hash value in the blacklist policy that is detected on a device is removed. Both the Cloud blacklist and whitelist policies take precedence over the exceptions that are created locally in the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager exceptions policy. The Security Cloud portal also includes a centralized view of all whitelisted and blacklisted items found in the Settings page. Let's take a brief look at the Symantec Endpoint Protection 14.1 Security Cloud-based product. To enroll SEP 14.1 into Security Cloud, you first have to create a Security Cloud-specific administrator account, which is created using a web page and an email link. We'll begin this demonstration by taking a look at this process. Here we see an example email message that is sent from the administrator of the Security Cloud account. This is going to begin the process for enrollment, and as you can see from the instructions shown, the next step will be to click on the Getting Started link and create a password for your account. So let's click on the Get Started button, and this will connect us to the Security Cloud website where we'll be prompted to create a password for our account. We'll also be prompted for some additional information such as a mobile phone number for contact information and name, and then we can create the account. Once created, we'll use our new password to sign in to the Security Cloud console. We'll click Sign In, and after a couple of minutes we'll be connected to the Security Cloud Console portal. The next thing we're going to want to look at is the actual enrollment of the SEPM itself into the Security Cloud Console. Now that we have an account created that allows us access, we can get the bits that we need to connect the on-premise SEPM with the Security Cloud Console. So we'll go ahead and look at the steps that take place to make that enrollment happen. Once in the Security Cloud Console, we can navigate to Settings, and we have an option to enroll a Symantec endpoint protection domain. We can click the Add button and we'll receive a token that we can simply copy to our clipboard. And then we'll transition to our SEPM Manager where we have a new icon labeled Security Cloud. We can simply paste in the token that we've copied out of the Security Cloud portal and click the Enroll button. This will get the SEPM communicating with the Security Cloud environment and synchronize the two systems. We'll see that we have an enrollment status in the SEPM that can be monitored on a continuing basis. And switching back to Security Cloud Console, I can use the setup checklist that's built in to the product and use this as a refresh point to refresh our page, and we'll see that our domain is enrolled. We'll see the name of our SEPM and the enrollment status in the Security Cloud Console. So let's take a look at the 14.1 Security Cloud Console itself and take a look at the policies and features that are really the heart of 14.1. This is the Security Cloud beta portal that we're using for this portion of the demonstration, and we're going to take a little tour through the various areas and take a look at some of the important features that we have in here. Very simple to navigate interface. This is the main page once you log in using your Security Cloud Console account. We can see we have some icons on the left-hand side, expanding menu of options. We have a dashboard area, devices, discovered items, policies, alerts and events, and of course we've already taken a brief look at settings when we enrolled a SEPM into the console, so we've taken a look at that process as well. So we're going to start out by taking a look at the dashboard page in the console. And once the dashboard page loads, we can see a couple of areas of interest to the admin user. Now the first thing is we're going to scroll down through in our view here. You're going to see we've got a couple different widget areas that we can collect some information. It starts out with this concept of a suspicious detection trend area. And if we have a very busy console interface, what you're going to see is a lot of different trends in here based on the detections that are happening in the environment. We're going to have things like the amount of suspicious detections shown, and then down here the blue area is going to indicate some actions that have been taken against those. One of the main areas to point out is we can see things like number of devices in the console, we can see total number of threats prevented in the console, and then we have this concept of suspicious detections. So really what the suspicious detections trend is, this is the threats that have been detected in the environment that have not been prevented. In other words, the things that SEP knows about, SEP is going to block. We're going to take care of those known threats. Really the heart of 14.1 is the ability to then look at these things that we're not really 100% sure of, and that's this idea of suspicious detections. They're going to be logged in the console so that an administrator can take a closer look at some of these trends or detections that are going on and make some determinations on a policy level about what they want to do to be able to block and filter those further. Ideally, what we would want to see over time as an administrator is your suspicious detection trend decreasing over time as we adjusted policies to fine-tune them. We can toggle a date range. We only have a 7-day date range. We can also click an expanded 30-day date range, and we'll see a few more detections going on in this particular environment that we have. Previously to 14.1, the idea was that SEP would really block or take action on known threats. If it was very confident we had a known threat, it would block actions based on the policies that were being used. And if not, it would really leave them alone. The idea behind 14.1 is to give you some visibility into those gray areas in between. Our policies in 14.1, which we'll take a look at, can be used to fine-tune those actions for the administrator. As we look at the threats in here, we can drill down and get further details about the specific threats shown. And we'll also take that information and then break it out in other ways in the dashboard page. We can see things like suspicious detections by risk level. SEP 14.1 uses a rating scale of 1 to 5 to rate these threats as they come in an environment, and it uses a rating system that you can see by policy and then use to tune and block actions. We'll take a closer look at that in a minute. But we'll break out those risks by very high risks. We'll also break them out by things like prevalence, meaning how many devices the particular risk may have been seen on or may have been found on in the environment. And we'll also get a view down at the bottom of a client distribution. Now in this particular environment, we're using 14 RU1 clients because that's required for 14.1 at this point. So let's take a look at the suspicious detection by risk. If I'm an administrator, I might want to drill down to see these very high risk threats that are in my environment. I can click on the graph to be taken to some details about those detections. Here's that idea of the intensity level scoring that we're seeing. Now this is going to log and rate the risks based on information that we're going to acquire about the threat using our standard SEP agent. And you're going to see some logging in here based upon the blocking level that you indicate by policy. 1 is going to be the most confidence that it is malicious. 5 would be the least confident scoring level. So depending on your environment, you're going to see various intensity level ratings in here. We can click on the file name itself in this view and get further details about the particular threat itself. A lot of things we can do in these pages. We won't go into details for all of them. We can break down this information in a number of different ways. We have some filters in here that allow us to sort this file as it continues to grow and gather information. We can use filters to do that. We can search files. We can also do things like rearrange our columns, customize the columns in the order we would like to see them presented. But we can also click on this link and get some further information about this particular threat. So as we scroll down through here, you'll see more information about the details of this particular threat, how prevalent it really is, when it was seen, information coming back from our reputation gathering on the virus as it's known in the Symantec global environment. We can see number of devices in our environment where this may be found, and we can also see activity. This is going to show things like actions taken by an administrator on this particular threat. Now you'll notice we also have some information here. We can automatically do some things with a simple click, like whitelist a particular file. If this is a threat that's maybe a false positive and you know this is a good file in your environment, you can choose to whitelist this, and we'll continue to not take blocking actions based on the whitelist. We can blacklist this directly. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And if you want to see what it's looking like on a global scale as well, you can also have a direct link into the virus total lookup to find out further information about this particular file. Let's click back to the dashboard. We can see a similar view when we select information about suspicious detections by prevalence. And we can do things like see, well, what devices in my environment have shown that they have this particular threat on them. And of course, all of these links are selectable to get to particular levels of detail about the device, the threat itself, and it continues to drill down as you continue to click on these links. One last look at the dashboard again is that client version distribution, and you can click on this graph as well, just like we did previously. That's really our dashboard view, and this is really designed to be the start of the workflow that's a little bit different in SEP 14.1, wherein an administrator would notice some threats that are suspicious in his environment, find out more information about that particular threat, and then choose to fine-tune the policies that are allowing these threats to be logged as opposed to being blocked directly. And the heart of that policy that drives that is really the policy called an anti-malware policy. So I'm going to skip over to look at the policies themselves. We have some out-of-the-box policies. They really are labeled as Symantec policies. These are policies that can be copied and cloned to create additional policies. You won't change those directly. Let's take a brief look at those. So we have a couple of main policies in here that are the basis of the system for its initial release. And the one that we're really interested in as far as the workflow of blocking and fine-tuning our policy is this policy called a Symantec Intensive Protection Policy. You'll probably hear this referred to by a couple of different names, but if we take a look at this, we can see some details around that. And this is the heart of the workflow that I kept kind of mentioning, where the policy itself will have a default blocking level and then a monitoring level. Now, the idea is that blocking will occur at a particular level. Logging will occur at basically everything in between. So if we're not blocking a policy, we find something in our environment that we're not sure of. If we block it, SEP is going to continue to block it like it's always done. But this allows the administrator ability to say, well, if I've got something that I'm not quite sure about, log that, and that's based on our monitoring level. That will log the suspicious detections into our dashboard and our system. I can then look at those threats further and decide whether I need to fine-tune my policy a little bit more to maybe up my blocking level. Maybe I'm blocking things that I don't want to be blocking. I can adjust my policy based on the information I receive back at the monitoring level. So the idea is that this is the fine-tuning that you would use for your policy. Now, the policy itself starts out as a Symantec policy. You don't edit this directly. What you can do is clone this. And in fact, out of the box, we have a default policy that's based on that. So we're going to switch over to the main policies tab. You'll be able to see in this view, we have a number of policies in here, most of which will have started out as a copy of the Symantec policy and can be monitored from there. The system will include a default intensive protection policy, and that's the same thing we were just looking at. You'll hear this referred to as anti-malware. You might also hear this referred to as aggressive mode, because that allows us to fine-tune that policy, really relying on the SEP agent's machine learning capabilities to help gather further details about the threats in a particular environment and feed them back into 14.1. Scrolling down, there's a couple of other general settings that are also part of this policy, and you can adjust these default settings as well. This is really driving the logging and the blocking levels, and this is sort of the main policy that's driving 14.1, allowing an administrator to deal with that gray area in between things that we know we need to block or leaving them alone. This gives us some ability to address some of those threats in an environment. Here are the controls that we would use to create additional policies, and of course you can then publish them to imported default groups. These are going to be the same groups that are synchronized to your SEPA manager, so your My Company default groups or any custom groups that you've created and have linked in here. One thing important to note in 14.1, when you synchronize the SEPM connection and enroll it into Security Cloud, the Security Cloud console then becomes the default controller for policies. They're no longer controlled in the SEPM level, they're controlled in the Security Cloud console level, so that's an important note to make. And it also includes a versioning, kind of a built-in change control for the policies. As new policies are created and added and republished, you see a version information about the policy itself. And of course, as we dig into device groups, you can see which groups have this particular policy directed towards them, and we can dig into further information as we drill down to these links as well. So that's the publishing of the policy. We could make changes to a policy, make a copy of that, and then use the publishing button to then apply a policy to our particular device groups. So I switch back to policies, the main policies page. Another area that we're going to talk about in 14.1, it's kind of, again, a Symantec policy that starts out as a default policy, which is a direct copy that can be edited, is the default system policy contains a primary setting for what is being called low bandwidth mode. And this is a policy setting that is off by default, and you can choose to turn on low bandwidth mode by changing that slider. That will allow the SEP agent to request updates from its SEPM on a very infrequent basis, and that is a 1-week content update. That's a very good setting for those environments that don't have a lot of connectivity, don't need frequent updates or connections. You can use low bandwidth mode for some of those types of devices. Another policy of note in 14.1 is this concept of a blacklist policy. A little bit different than what we have in SEP today. This is a very easy way to kind of blacklist files directly. You can see here's our versioning information on this particular policy, and our test environment has been changed. We can see some of that information as well. And we can see some details about some items that have been blacklisted and have been added to this policy. We can then publish that blacklist policy and kind of block some of these files directly. So let's kind of walk through just a quick view of that. We'll go back to our dashboard and we'll look at one of our suspicious high-level threats. And let's say, for instance, we have this file hash, and we've decided after our investigation that this is something we want to blacklist directly. I can simply add this to our default blacklist policy or choose another policy, and then click Submit to have that threat added to our default blacklist policy. And there's our version control again popping in place saying we have created a new version of this. And then all our devices that are in the devices group connected to that policy would then receive that based on their next connectivity into SEPM and getting that updated policy. So the idea is not necessarily that we're going to blacklist every single file here. The idea is that we can accomplish more using our advanced machine learning on the agent itself with the aggressive mode policy than using a whitelist or blacklist. Blacklisting a file directly would really be the exception rather than the rule. Once we've created some of these blacklists or whitelists, the console does include an interesting setting under the Settings button, in that we can go to a centralized blacklist and whitelist view. So if you wanted to see everything that had either been added to a blacklist or a whitelist in a particular environment, you get a centralized view here in Settings. Much like the blacklist policy, there is also a policy called a default exclusions policy. This is really a whitelist policy type. Now this is going to be related to the exceptions policy that we have in SEP today. And in fact, if you are linking a SEP and would have exceptions policies created, it will automatically import individual exceptions policies. And again, you can simply change this, get information about items that have been added to here. And this would be an area where you could add individual items as well as bulk import whitelists. So let's say you have a development group, again, in your environment that has a bunch of applications that are in a testing state that are being passed around that may be detected as suspicious in some way, or you're getting false positive readings on those and you want to create an exception around those. You can exclude by particular file paths by simply creating add here, specify a path where they may live on the endpoint so that those can be excluded, or you could also exclude them by file name or hash value by simply changing the policy here. A couple of other areas of interest is discovered items. And this gives us a similar view of what we see on the dashboard, maybe one file level down, that kind of allows us to have a real direct look at the threats that have been both found, blocked, whitelisted, blacklisted in our environment. We again can use some of those included filters. You can also use search files by information. For instance, maybe you're interested in files where the signer is unsigned. This allows you to use some search terms and pull up some information about the threats that have been found in that environment. And again, you have the ability to sort columns as we looked at previously, and you can see some different views depending on how you like to look at that information. Down in the threats area, you also have some icons that will pop up on a particular threat. You have the ability to whitelist and blacklist from these controls. Also view the virus information directly using the icons in this as well. And you can also use filtering and filter by date, devices seen on, and other areas. So it's very flexible in how you can view the data, and that's under discovered items. Gives you sort of that direct threat view without going through the dashboard itself. Alerts and events will show us a kind of a graphical view that we can again drill down on, again all the logging that's going on in the environment. That's going to be the events, and then particular alerts that may have been sent to an administrator. You can click on that to get date ranges and click down for more information. We can see the type of information and alerts that are on the side as we scroll across. And then Events tab will show all the continuous logging that goes down, and we can continue to scroll through that and dig down that if we wanted to. But you can access that data directly using the graph. It's kind of a nice way to drill down as you go across time, and allows you to kind of click, drill to some information and see a clear view of what's happening, again by date range. You can then drill down and drill to specific information and logging events that have been taking place in your environment. I think the last area that we want to look at for this kind of quick overview is, of course, the settings screen. We've looked at this when we looked initially at the SEPM enrollment, where we saw that we could enroll our SEPM Endpoint Protection Manager enrollment. We can look at that information. We can also see the administrator roles and privileges and create access for the administrator roles in this page. Also configure alerts. These are going to be default alert configurations and notifications sent to the admins. And we also, we looked at our blacklist and whitelist page. We also have the ability to create specific tags in the environment, another way to filter views and information that gives you some flexibility in how you can customize the information seen in the Security Cloud console. Let's take a last look at that page again. This shows us a different SEPM. This is different than the enrollment piece that we showed in our demonstration, but we can see our status here as being enrolled. We can see that we're using the Security Cloud console to manage our devices. as well as controls our policies. So this is something we can turn off. If we wanted to continue to use the on-premise SEPM to manage the devices themselves, we can do that by toggling that. When this is on, much like the policy controls, the security cloud environment becomes the default device manager, overriding the SEPM. The remaining page is the devices page, and this of course will give us a view of the devices that are synchronized and enrolled, as well as the device groups that have been imported from SEPM or created here in Security Cloud Console as well. So that is our quick look at SEP 14.1 Security Cloud Console. This is the memory exploit mitigation policy for SEP 14 RU1 and 14.1 topic. Memory exploit mitigation, or MEM, is an updated policy included in SEP 14 RU1. It replaces and augments the previously named policies proactive exploit protection and generic exploit mitigation. Memory exploit mitigation protects applications in your network from vulnerability attacks by using the following types of mitigation techniques: heap spray mitigation, Java Security Manager, structured exception handling overwrite protection, return-oriented programming attacks, including ROP heap. The policy settings are not configurable when the domain is enrolled in Security Cloud. Memory exploit mitigation policy offers expanded control in Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. Protection mitigation techniques can be granularly controlled. The policy page displays the application list per mitigation technique. Use application-level controls to configure actions to enable and disable protection, or set to log only. The Memory Exploit Mitigation Policy page is divided into two tabs: Mitigation Techniques and Application Rules. The checkbox can be used to globally enable or disable memory exploit mitigation. You can set the protection action for all techniques to log only via the checkbox. Using the drop-down, you can select each technique individually and then choose a default action for all applications that are listed under this technique. Choose an override action for a particular application that is being protected by a specific technique using the drop-down next to each application in the list. Actions include yes, no, or log only. On the Application Rules tab, you can select or deselect which applications are protected by the policy. You can see the status of the policy protection setting by navigating to the Endpoint Protection Manager Clients page. Clients Protection Technology View shows memory exploit mitigation enabled or disabled. This replaces the SEP 14 generic exploit mitigation labeling. When your SEPM is enrolled in the Cloud Console, you manage memory exploit mitigation policies in the cloud only. The policy settings are similar to the policy settings that are available in the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. Memory exploit mitigation is only available if you have installed intrusion prevention. Memory exploit mitigation has its own set of separate signatures that are downloaded along with the intrusion prevention definitions. However, you can enable or disable intrusion prevention and memory exploit mitigation independently. For the remainder of the presentation, we'll focus on SEP 14 RU1 candidate updates that will primarily affect the on-premise installation or other integration points only. This is the certificate exception for SEP 14 RU1 topic. Symantec Endpoint Protection 14 RU1 now includes the ability to exclude detections based on a file certificate. X509 DER and Base64 certificate types are supported. The only action for certificate-based exclusions is to ignore. Exclusions apply to antivirus scans, manual scan, command scan, right-click scans, email scan, do scan, TCP, quarantine rescan, and unremediated scan autoprotect, viral, non-viral, non-portal, TCP, Sonar BPE, and Sonar behavioral policy enforcement. The policy settings are not configurable when the domain is enrolled in Security Cloud. Certificate exceptions are configured from within the Exceptions policy in Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. Open the Exceptions policy, click Add to select Windows Exceptions Certificate to open the Certificate Exception window. When adding an exception to the policy, you will need a copy of the public certificate in a DER or Base64 encoded file. The certificate can be exported using the Windows Certificate Management snap-in or from an existing sign file by using the Certificate Export Wizard. This is the Endpoint Detection and Response Advanced Threat Protection, or ATP, support topic. Endpoint Detection and Response, or EDR, is an emerging technology. It defines a category of tools and solutions that focus on detecting and investigating suspicious activities and issues on hosts and endpoints. Advanced persistent threats and designer malware toolkits are intentionally bypassing traditional signature-based antivirus solutions. Adding EDR capabilities to the endpoint offers greater visibility into endpoint data and helps mitigate and disrupt advanced threats. Within SEP and ATP version 2, EDR has the ability to communicate with SEP clients via the SEPM using REST APIs. It is important to note that this process is reliant on a client's heartbeat to receive the commands issued by ATP to the SEPM and onto the client. The SEP 14.0 client introduced several core components that will enable enhanced EDR functionality. For example, a new content type, endpoint detection and response, was introduced. Current versions of ATP will not be able to enable most of these newer features. However, ATP will enable the EDR features in EDR content in SEP 14.0 RU1. This is the application hardening, SEP hardening topic. What is SEP hardening? SEP hardening will allow an enterprise to evaluate its attack surface and identify gaps at the application level. It builds upon existing SEP 14 and 14.1 client protection technologies to isolate untrusted applications, block suspicious behavior in web browsers and productivity apps, and protect enterprise applications from memory exploits. Using the deployed SEP 14 RU1 based agent, SEP hardening protects against both file-based and fileless malware being introduced by application macros, web browsers, and other applications. SEP hardening will be available later this calendar year, following closely behind the release of SEP 14.1. However, some component features will be visible in SEP RU1. Use of SEP hardening will require an additional separate product license. Application hardening will be visible as a new feature in Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager 14 RU1. It will be on by default for the full protection for clients feature set. Application hardening feature is only available for machines running 64-bit client-only OSs, Windows 7 or newer. In SEP 14 RU1, when installing SEP 14 Full Protection for Clients, the application hardening, also known as a DCS agent, will be installed with its services and drivers running. However, hardening will not be operational. In SEP 14 RU1, the application hardening feature is dormant, and there is no reporting on it in SEPM. Use of this feature requires Security Cloud enrollment, an additional product license, and will be activated in the SEP hardening release. Here we can see the Full Protection for Clients install feature set containing the application hardening setting and feature description. As noted, the application hardening feature requires enrollment in Security Cloud and only applies to clients version 14 RU1 and later. New services are installed to support the SEP hardening feature functionality. Services are currently labeled Symantec Data Center Security Server Agent, IDS Agent, and Utility. As previously noted, these services are dormant in SEP 14 RU1. This is the REST API for SEP 14 RU1 updates topic. REST, or Representational State Transfer, is an application program interface, or API, that uses HTTP requests to manipulate data. Symantec Endpoint Protection uses REST APIs to connect to and perform SEPM operations from a remote application. For example, Symantec Advanced Threat Protection. Endpoint Protection 14 RU1 expands the number of available REST APIs. Most of these expanded APIs are intended to be utilized for cloud management and advanced threat protection integration. For further information about API integration, see the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager 14 REST API reference at the link shown.